Welcome to the 1905 podcast with your hosts Joe Kevin and Chris Sheen. Joe and I have been going to Stamford Bridge for over 30 years. This podcast takes you inside our unfiltered voice notes on all things Chelsea, sharing our view from Gate 13 of the Matthew Harding stand. Let's hit the notes. In this episode, we look back at a frustrating and fiery draw with Forest at the Bridge that leaves us fourth going into the international break. We ask ourselves whether we have a discipline problem and answer your questions, including the most talented player ever to play for Chelsea. Let's start with Joe's reaction to the win against Ghent way back last Thursday.
I've got to say, I hadn't really factored in how much I was looking forward to European football back at Chelsea. And when the commentators were sort of going around explaining the fixtures that were coming up in the upcoming weeks, I was a bit like, blimey, never heard of half these teams. But in a strange way, it's kind of nice that we get the opportunity to go and play some teams and play at some sort of countries that we maybe never will. Hopefully we won't go there again if we end up sort of doing well in the Champions League. We can qualify for it. But in the short term, with a young team and an inexperienced team, it's really nice to see them play European football and get used to 2 fixtures a week, because if Chelsea want to be a competitive team again, obviously that's what we have to do. And it's actually quite nice that we can do it at a slightly lesser competitive market, if you want to call it that, so that we get the opportunity to dip our toe in and get a sense of what European football is all about. And I've got to say, I thought that Ghent came out fairly decently. They were quite good. I thought they essentially played some decent football for the first maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and Chelsea didn't do badly by any means, but it was like they were just sort of feeling them out a little bit, letting them come on to them slightly. And I've noticed this with Chelsea a couple of times where they've just let teams have a little sense of joy just for a few moments, and then suddenly, bam, they come out quite quickly on the counter-attack. And after that, they're quite good at sustaining pressure when the opposing goalkeeper kind of has it in his hands, or perhaps it's a goal kick, and they try to play out from the back. Chelsea are very good at pressing and like stealing the ball high up the field. So it was almost like when we did score that opening goal, Chelsea just seemed to be kind of dominant and really kind of in the mood for it. They were really up for it. And it was nice to see that we just got really hungry. And with a completely different 11, you're going to sense that maybe these guys have got a point to prove. And that's obvious. That's an obvious statement, I know, but it doesn't always translate onto the field. And sometimes you feel as though players are going through the motions. I didn't get that from Chelsea last night. I thought that we were very powerful from kind of minute 1 to the end. So I've got to mention the first goal because it was a really nice bit of play. It was Disasi, again, from their possession, Disasi breaking the ball up and just giving it nice and simple into KDH, who slid in Mudryk, who found himself on the right-hand side. And his ball with his right foot to the back post was absolutely beautifully met. I mean, Vega's header was a world-class header. And then there was just a lot of kind of good play from Chelsea. Lots of little chances they had. There were lots of great little 1-2s and interplay between the front players and the midfield players. I thought that Neto's pace was devastating in that first half. He was up and down all night long. He gave his fullback no chance whatsoever. And every time he got it, he was just whipping past him, getting crosses in, maybe laying back to his fullback. But he always looks dangerous, Neto. I think he's going to be a really good addition. As the games tick by and the season sort of moves on a little bit, I think you're going to find he's going to be quite an important player for us. And on the other side, I thought Mudryk, for his goal, obviously he made the first goal and fair play to him, was a really good cross. I was sort of sitting there and I was going, just go past your player. He kept doing the same thing. I'm going, oh, he's going to come off again at half time, because he was dribbling up to his fullback once again and then just doing the easy thing and laying it back to Vega. And I was like, oh no. And then he started to get his act together. He did it once and he suddenly thought to himself, oh yeah, I can do this. And to be honest, once he started doing it, he didn't stop. And it was like, he just needed almost like that confidence, that green light to go, oh, I know, I'm a winger, aren't I? The constant pulling the ball back for the fullback is not why you're in the team. If I had pace like that, I'd be wanting to run past people all the time. But football, confidence of football do go hand in hand. And if you haven't got any, you can look shot to pieces. But it was nice to see that he actually did start to pick up the pace last night. And once he had a few iffy moments pulling back, he started to go past his player, ghosting past his players. And actually, he was pretty dangerous in that first half. It was clear to see that I thought KDH had a fairly sort of slow start to the game. He wasn't terrible by any means, but I thought it took him maybe 15, 20 minutes to really get involved. He had a hand in the first goal, but I didn't think his all-round play was sensational, just fairly kind of, average. Got the ball, gave it quite simple, nothing, which is fine. It's kind of what he's in the team for. But then you really saw like a light bulb went off, and Cassidy played quite well last night too. I'll give him a bit of credit, but I thought Dewsbury Hall outshone pretty much everybody in the field in the second half as well. He was outstanding, and it was nice to see a player that clearly going to Chelsea has meant a lot to him, and he hasn't had the start that he's wanted. He's been injured, and people have been a little bit critical of him for maybe not forcing Enzo or Caicedo, not maybe out the team, but not pushing them hard enough. But I think on performances like last night, you're going to see him get more game time in the Premier League. So fair play to him, because I was a little bit critical after about 10 or 15 minutes. I was like, the central midfield area looks a little bit weak. But actually, once he, he's got his tail up a little bit, you could see that he was driving forward with the ball. He was making some really fantastic passes for the forward players. And it was nice to see a midfield player, a bit like Enzo recently, being proactive and actually playing forward and not playing sideways and back. So, yeah, fair play to Kid and Dewsbury Hall. Badie Shield, I thought, was poor. If I'm being brutally honest, I thought his first half was poor. He gave the ball away far too many times. This is a centre-back that when he came last season, sorry, it might be the year before, actually, we all thought we found a gem. He was wonderful. He was great on the ball. He was great in the air, quick. And you think, we've got a good one here. But unfortunately, I thought he had a fairly poor game. His second half was much improved, but overall, I thought he wasn't brilliant. He was probably one of the weaker ones. Also, I'd say Disasi wasn't great. He had some good moments, Disasi. That little pass for Neto for the second goal, the assist, fair play, really good ball. He made some, you could argue, he made the assist for the first goal by sort of breaking the play up for Dewsbury Hall and then on to Mudryk. But I didn't think he was wonderful last night. And the marking from the corner the goal we conceded, the first goal, it was just really poor. It was complacent and it was fairly needless. It was a great header from the guy, to be fair, really good header. Jorgensen had absolutely no chance of getting it. It was nothing to do with him. Either goal, to be fair, for Jorgensen, nothing he could do about any of those. I thought Jorgensen had a very good game. But yeah, I just thought the Chelsea defending for that was bang average, and the sort of thing they just switched off. And this is something that those young players need to realise, is that if you're going to get in the Chelsea first team, you need to be switched on from the whole 90 minutes. Pleased for Nkunku, because I thought he was fairly anonymous all night long. He barely touched the ball, and then he suddenly popped up with a good finish on the edge of the box there, which is rifling in from low and hard, and the goalkeeper, he might be disappointed he didn't save it, but it was a fairly well-hit shot, so I think it was always going to trouble him. And obviously, Dewsbury Hall getting the last with another good finish on the sort of, not quite the edge of the box, but sort of around the same sort of area as Nkunku's, and it was just a parry out, and he finished it off, and that capped off a really good night for Dewsbury Hall. And obviously all the Chelsea fans got out their camera lights, as the Ghent fans had done for their goal, which was quite nice, a little bit of shithousery from the fans there, which I've really enjoyed, but actually gave a really good spectacle. On the pictures you've seen at Stamford Bridge, like today from last night, that goal when it goes in, all the fireflies lit up on, in the ground, it was really impressive. And you could sort of tell that Maresca had basically really enjoyed Dewsbury Hall's goal. He really celebrated that one, probably the most of them all. And so he's clearly a player that I think he likes. So don't expect to see him out of the team for too long. I think you might see him coming to the side, particularly if he can get his confidence up. I think Maresca does really like him, and I think that he had a bit of Danny Drinkwater about him when we signed him. I know it's the same fee and from the same club, Leicester, but I don't know. I was a bit like, have we bought a dud? But based on last night's performance, I don't think we have, and I think that was a really important sort of 60, 70 minutes that you had. It was excellent. And again, we were a little bit sloppy for their second goal. And I was just sort of thinking about that, because as Ghent went through with about 30 seconds to go, they had another chance, which was actually a very good block, and I forget who the player was who blocked it, but that could have squeezed in. And if that had gone to 4-3, you'd have been like, what? It just had an air of inexperience about that performance last night. Apart from, I really enjoyed it, and I thought Chelsea were far and away the better team. Could have scored 6 or 7 easily. Ghent should have been nowhere near a goal, let alone 2 goals. So, again, something to work on, but Chelsea were excellent. There's no getting away from it. They were excellent. And people will sort of argue that they're only playing against the Conference League competition, but it's a competition we're in. I think Chelsea would love to win it. I think Maresca would love to go as far as he could, because it's, again, a good opportunity for a trophy straight away. So time will tell, but I thought Chelsea overall last night were really good, really encouraging to see.
Well, a few days after that game, Chelsea would, of course, be home to Nottingham Forest. And this is how Joe and I saw the game live on the day. Let's start with Joe's reaction to the team sheet.
I think I could have gone to my local bookies today and picked the first 11, and that's exactly what we got. I think during the week I was probably quite bullish on our performance against Nottingham Forest coming up. I maybe was giving them not as much credit as they probably deserve. They've obviously just gone to Anfield and won recently. Their away form is clearly much better than their home form at the moment, and they are looking to counter-attack teams when they're on the road. So, yeah, got to be mindful of that. I mean, having watched Man City, Arsenal and Liverpool pretty much struggle in their matches yesterday, and 2 of those were at home, Liverpool were on the road. But, yeah, I think no game in the Premier League is a given, and I've said that in the past. I think because we're riding that crest of a wave and we are scoring goals so freely, it's given me that confidence that I think that Chelsea can go and beat any team, whoever we're playing. But I must remember that obviously this is the Premier League and anyone on any given day can bite you in the arse. So, yeah, be a tough game, but let's get those 3 points.
Yeah, Chelsea team as expected, isn't it, really? It's a big game for Madueke. He was probably the one player that you kind of thought might get pulled out for Neto, but I think it's probably the right call. But yeah, it's a big game for him. I fancy him today, actually, weirdly. And yeah, Hudson-Odoi in the Forest team, so I imagine he'll get a pretty good reception from the Bridge faithful, which will be nice as long as he's a good boy and doesn't have too good a game, and can have a decent game, not do much, and then come off to a standing ovation at 70 minutes with Chelsea 4-0 up. That'll be fine. And James Ward-Prowse is in there. I sort of forgot he was at Forest, but he's dangerous, isn't he, from obviously set pieces, so that's one thing that we have to be a bit careful of. He's one free kick away from equalling David Beckham's Premier League record of direct free kicks scored. I saw that stat the other day. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to the game today, and fingers crossed we're going to the international break with a good result, good performance.
About 29 minutes through this first half, I'd say that it's been a fairly even game. I think Chelsea have had the better of the chances, although there hasn't been a particularly clear-cut one yet. I think Noni is getting a lot of joy on that right-hand side. Palmer's dropping deeper to sort of find him, and he's done that 2 or 3 times. I think Chelsea defensively look good. I think Forest certainly don't look out of the game. They're defending very well and proving to be a tough nut to crack. I say thus far, Jackson's not really been involved, making lots of good runs, but we haven't found him. I think Noni's decision-making at times has been a little bit suspect, but I think he's getting plenty of the ball, and I think if he keeps getting it, he'll make something happen. Sancho in the early going was good. He's been very busy. Again, I think Forest are getting numbers back and defending very well. So, yeah, it's been a good game actually without any real clear-cut chances for either side. Good so far, but could be better.
Half time, and it's tight, isn't it? It's probably not that dissimilar to what we thought it might be. We know that Forest are pretty defensively solid, and it's kind of what they did at Liverpool, isn't it? Which is, yeah, kind of what you expected. It's a bit of a throwback, isn't it, in terms of teams coming to Stamford Bridge and really sort of sitting back, very low block, kind of what we would have been used to back in the day. And you feel like the last couple of years, actually, not that many teams have done it. They've kind of come to Stamford Bridge fancying themselves. So it's a sign of our progression and kind of a sign of the new challenge that we know we're going to get as we hopefully improve. The obvious thing to say is, and I think it's where you think we've got a real chance here, is the bench. Actually, it looks a bit more like an Nkunku game than a Jackson one, in terms of there's no space in behind, which we know Jackson loves. Nkunku's so good in those tight spaces in the box that you wonder if he might get a look in at some point, not too long into the game. And then actually, Madueke's been probably the pick of the 2 wingers. He's been pretty lively. Obviously, the final ball hasn't been quite there, the final shot, but he's getting at that fullback every time. Generally, it's not bad, is it? It's not bad. Nothing to panic about. Come on, Chelsea.
It's one of those games that you just think, oof, first goal might win this. So, yeah, like I said, my sort of mid-game note there, I think Forest are proving to be a very tough team to crack here, and this won't be easy. I think they're getting numbers back in their droves, and it's been really difficult for us to sort of get any kind of fluidity going. They're not letting us in, like Brighton last week, they let us in around the sort of 6 to 18 yard box time and time again. Well, Forest are making sure they're getting their defensive midfield players back, and the centre halves are close together. Their fullbacks are close to the centre halves. So, yeah, I think the most joy we've had is when we've been going at Moreno on the right-hand side, on our right-hand side with Noni. He's got in probably 2 or 3 times, and at the very end there, where obviously the ball's clipped the post and rolled back into the goalkeeper's arms. Those ones are always so frustrating because you just think, on another day, that just nestles in the bottom corner, an ugly goal, but who cares? But yeah, I wouldn't say Forest have been unbelievable, but they're certainly in the game and they are creating chances. Murillo coming up from the back and having a whack at Sanchez, that's probably their first shot on target. but they look fairly dangerous when they get in and around our 18-yard box. Chris Wood, I don't think he's a fantastic player, but he's so big. He's making Levi Colwill and Fofana look quite small in comparison. But he's kind of he's a pest. He's good at holding the ball up, so he's a good player to sort of bounce the ball off for the likes of Vaughan Gibbs-White and James Ward-Prowse. So we've got to be careful of that. I think we are certainly capable of winning this game, but this is the sort of game I mentioned about 4 or 5 weeks ago. A game that it's not ugly because Chelsea have played fairly well, but it's tight, and it might be that 1-0 wins this match, like I said at the very beginning. So let's hope for definitely the win, but for God's sake, Chelsea, don't lose this game.
Palmer, who's impressed plenty this season. Madueke wants it onto his left foot, and he's gone all the way through. And Chelsea have their equaliser. He's been threatening it all afternoon, Noni Madueke.
Wow, did we need that goal? I mean, I had that feeling we spaced it at half-time. It looks like a 1-goal game, and after they scored, it did feel that way, but, a little bit lucky, but Madueke did well, and he's been direct, hasn't he, the whole game. Needed that, and since then, to be fair, we have been excellent, and it kind of has everyone lifted the crowd, so 25 minutes to go, it's there to be won. It's just a shame we can't beat the first man on the corner, because it's embarrassing. Other than that, it's better.
The corners are an absolute disgrace, aren't they? That is such a poor corner again. Just what's the point? You're sending all the centre halves up there to kick it fucking 3 yards on the ground. Yeah. Oh, dreadful.
Final whistle's just gone. I'm going to give my immediate reaction. And, the first thing I've got to say is we've given him probably more stick than anyone on this podcast, but Sanchez has made an absolutely brilliant save there at the end. And to be fair, the one before, which was a great save, but the one at the end, as that happened, I was like, that's a goal, we've lost it. It was like, it's in, that's a goal, and he's pulled off an absolutely world-class save to get us a point. That said, we should have had 2 absolute sitters, really, to win the game ourselves, both headers. Felix has got to score. He's got to score his one, and then Nkunku as well. He's hit the target, but he's got to bury it. And actually, you'd fancy him from there. Mudryk, to give him credit, he looked so lively when he came on. And again, I've often been quite critical of him, but that cross and run for the Nkunku header would have been one of the all-time Chelsea assists. It was basically a 90-yard run down the pitch, wasn't it? Basically went the whole length of the left touchline, put a perfect cross in. And yeah, you disappoint him with them having 10 men. Absolutely, that is the feeling. You think you want to win the game, and you should. But I'm not as angry or as annoyed as I might be. We gave everything there, and then Forest aren't a bad side, and defensively they're strong. They've won at Anfield this year. They'll do this to a lot of teams. I think you can see them doing well away from home. Because they're that sort of team. They sit deep, hit you, and often when you draw a game, if you've come back from behind, it doesn't hurt quite as much, does it? So I don't think anyone should get too overreactive in terms of disappointment. Of course, dropping 2 points at home is annoying, but as you always say, Joe, you like to do season-on-season comparison, don't you? And it's a point gained on last season, and actually they scored at a very similar time, didn't they, last season, and we didn't respond. And I think it shows how we've grown as a team, that we were able to get back in the game and get something for the game, and probably, could have won it, but could have lost it as well. Obviously, with Villa drawing as well, we stay 4th, so we basically should go into international break 4th in the league, and that isn't too bad, is it? I think we would all have taken that at the start of the season, so we'll reflect more on it, I'm sure. Let's hear your thoughts as well, Joe, but yeah, gutted not to win it, but equally not too upset, but disappointed.
I'll be honest, I wasn't really feeling that second half at all. I felt really frustrated. Maybe I shouldn't, maybe I'm asking too much, but I just felt as though that was another home game, another drop 2 points. That's my opinion. Yes, Forest played well, as in they defended well. Are they a great side? No. We've dropped 2 points at home to Palace this season. We've won 1 Premier League game out of 4 at home. I suppose that just makes me feel a little bit gross. I think had we drawn today and beaten Palace, I'd have felt a little bit better. But yeah, I suppose I'm really frustrated with the refs. I think the referees in this country it's not a reason why the game finished the way it did, but it goes a long way. I knew at 13 minutes extra time, I just knew he was going to blow the whistle on 13 minutes. Doesn't matter what happens in that 13 minutes, they blow the whistle. And it's just like, for God's sake, there's been so much time wasting from the goalkeeper, from the throw-ins, from every person in the Forest team. And yet, obviously, of course, we have to play the exact 13 minutes that are put on. The reason you've played 30 minutes to start with, because there has been some injuries and there has been some time wasting already. So when there's time wasting and injury time, can we please play the extra 5 minutes that has been wasted from the goalkeeper and everybody else? It just drives me mad. I really hate it. From a team perspective, I thought we were safe today, pretty safe. I didn't think we were as dynamic as we have been recently. Home form seems to be the one that is definitely lacking at the moment. I don't know why. You said it in the sort of before the game that teams are coming to the bridge and sitting back a lot more now. So is that a sign of respect? Yes, probably. But I still think as though we're good enough to break these sides down. Having said that, Cole Palmer had two chances when the score was 1-1, and Sills made 2 fantastic saves. Obviously, in Nkunku, you could call it a good save. And it is a good save from the goalkeeper, but that is a shocking miss. Mudryk does brilliantly well. You're right to sort of give him all the praise he deserves for that. He was really good for that run, and the cross was perfect. I mean, you couldn't have placed it better for Nkunku, and that's why you're in the team, mate. That is your golden opportunity. Go and win the game for your mates. And then obviously after that, yes, there was the red card and what went on with Ward-Prowse, but they've probably had the 2 or 3 best chances other than Nkunku's one. They've probably had the 2 best chances at the end there to score, and the shot from Nico Williams, which was excellent, and Sanchez made a great save there. And obviously for the header, forgive me because I can't quite remember who the Forest player was that headed it towards goal, but I, like you, said goal. In my head I went, that's a goal. And Sanchez made a great save. So I suppose I'm more frustrated than you. I think that's evidently clear. I'm not unhappy with the season. I'm not unhappy with the players. Of course, everything that I've said before this is also true. I like the team. I love the manager. I love all of that. But I can still be frustrated. I can still be pissed off with that home draw. It's another home draw. I just think it's a waste. Don't know what else to say, really. I think maybe in the next few days I'll probably have another think about it. But yeah, I just think if you want to be serious players and you want to be serious team, and Maresca's come out this week and said we're not going to finish above Arsenal or Man City or whatever, fine, if that's how you believe, and I understand why you would say that, because obviously they are a lot further into their journey than we are at the moment. But I just think when you've got a run of games of Liverpool, Arsenal, Man United, Newcastle, I think Leicester's in there somewhere as well, in the next 5 games are difficult matches. And look, Chelsea might surprise us. They might win a couple of those, draw a couple of those. They might lose 2-4, who knows? But I just think that Palace and Forest at home are where you make your money. And you're right, we gained a point on Forest last season in this fixture. So on my own scale, obviously that's a result, but it just didn't feel like that today. I didn't feel as though we were quite ready for how they were going to play against us, which was a low block, 10 men behind the ball. For the most part, they did hit us on the counter-attack a few times. Obviously, they got a lot of their joy from like long throws and basically just sticking it in the box and mixing it up, which we didn't do enough of. Jackson was a little bit... He did well, actually, in the second half. He was probably a shiny light. He chased down the defenders, and the ball was just not quite running for him because he did a lot of the hard work. And when he was about to shoot, he had to sort of maybe knock it around the goalkeeper again, and then the angle got awkward for him, so he felt as though he had to pass, which is the correct decision. But he didn't quite have the rub of the green today when the ball was falling a little bit awkwardly. But I think overall, it's a point at home. It's not a loss. We were 1-0 down. I should probably feel grateful for that, but it just doesn't feel like that at the moment, I'm afraid.
We're going to turn over now to a friend of the show and regular contributor, Owen Phillips. And we wanted, going into the international break, to get Owen's feeling on the season so far and kind of how we're shaping up this year compared to last year under Poch. So over to you, Owen, and thanks for being part of the show.
Hi, fellas. Chelsea still continues to provide all sorts of stuff to talk about, isn't it? It's fascinating and it's generally really positive, I think. There's lots going on. There's lots of interesting stuff to talk about, and we're just looking like a team again, aren't we? I know the frustration thing is failing to beat Forest, but any other day we win that, don't we? And there's so many good things to come out of it. And if you compare to where we were this time last season, 7 league games in, last season we only won 2. We drew with Bournemouth, who we've already beaten this season. We drew with Forest at home. Last season we lost 1-0 at home, didn't we? And missed all sorts of silly chances, but we weren't particularly good. Both opposition teams are better, so the better result says it all. But there's definitely progress. It feels like the team's taking shape. There's more balance. There's a plan. There's a clear and obvious plan. We look settled. He looks like Maresca's got a decent idea of what team he wants, how he wants to play. There's more passion. There's a little bit of spikiness, which I like, which has been missing for a long time. Enzo annoyed people, doesn't he? He gets in and around people, and there's that sort of obvious care about the way what it means, and there's a bit more of a connection with the fans. Attacking wise, like, you just got options everywhere. You can start any one of about 10 players, and I know we've been castigated for that, and fair enough, you can understand it, but actually, having Sancho, Jackson, Palmer, and Nkunku, Madueke, Neto, Mudryk to choose from, it's just brilliant. Any one of those, and Felix, obviously forgot him as well. They come everywhere, don't they? So we've got different ways to win games with a similar system, and the defence is settling down. I just think there's real signs of progress. Home form's annoying, 2 frustrating draws. Even if we'd won one of them, then it's a great start, not just a very good start. But you'll take 4th in the league. We've only lost at home to City, and I think if that game hadn't have come in the first game, I think we'd have got a decent result against them. I just think because it was the first game, the lack of belief was there, and as soon as you start struggling or you go a goal down, it maybe wasn't quite the right time to sort of play them, really. But plenty to go at, really positive about it, really enjoying the football, feel like we're playing a better, more exciting brand. And as I say, if anything, it's the fact that there's that passion. And one thing I noticed, for all the praise you give Palmer, the 4 goals against Brighton, that magnificent free kick, everything about him's quality. I love watching him play. One thing I did notice was the Nkunku header at the end of the Forest game. I think that sums it up, that he's busting a gut to get in the box, if you look at it, and he runs in, and then he sort of does that sort of schoolboy leap where he thinks it's going in and he can't believe it's saved, but he's trying to get in the box, he's trying to get in the end of it, and then he's willing his teammate to score. And sometimes you felt there was not that connection between the players, never mind the fans. But yeah, onwards and upwards. Come on, you Blues.
One of the things that has come up since the game against Forest, and I think it's actually fair enough, there's been articles in the BBC and The Athletic about Chelsea's discipline issue with us picking up yet more bookings. Fofana and Cucurella are the 2 first players in the Premier League this year to get suspended for reaching 5 bookings. And they actually have some really interesting stats on the BBC website, which I'll pull out for you here. So Chelsea picked up 27 bookings a season, so that's more than any other team in the Premier League already. Last season, we did pick up the most yellow cards with 105, which was also a Premier League record, breaking Leeds' 120 Leeds back in 2021-22. So it's an interesting one. I would love to know your thoughts on this, Joe, and how big a problem you think it is and where you think it stems from. I felt like last season, we definitely fell victim early on to the whole clamping down on talking back to the referees and all that kind of stuff. And Jackson was the biggest culprit of it than anyone, wasn't he? But it felt like that has been less of a thing. And there's still obviously examples of it, but it just feels like we're picking up bookings for all sorts of different things at the moment. And I'll pick out a couple because I think there are a couple of points which I think just have been really unfair. Cucurella's booking at the weekend against Forest. He's been absolutely doubt, and then he started doubt Maresca. He gets understandably upset by the whole thing, and he ends up picking up a booking for that, which means he's suspended for the Liverpool game. So that, to be honest, felt like a bit of a joke. And of course, the game at Bournemouth, which had, again, a record number of bookings in a Premier League match. And when you look back at most of those bookings, they're laughable, a lot of them, what people are getting booked for. So, yeah, There's definitely an element of immaturity. There was a really good, I mean, we know we've got a young squad, but it came out this week. I don't know if people have seen the image on social media of squad age across the Premier League. And Chelsea's average starting lineup this season is the youngest in the Premier League, but it's the youngest by quite a way. I mean, it's actually pretty staggering. So the average age of Chelsea's squad is 23. So 23 years old, 228 days. And that's the average age. It just shows how young we are. The next youngest is Bournemouth, and it's their average is over 2 years more. So it's 25 plus. So that in itself is definitely has to be a factor, doesn't it, in all this? The oldest, by the way, if you're interested, is Everton. So Everton's average is 28, 246 days. So over 5 years average older. So that's bound to be a part of it, isn't it? Element of immaturity, some just being kind of a little bit reckless in decision making and probably answering back. Yeah, I'm interested to know what you think, Joe, how much of a big concern it is to you. Maresca hasn't seemed too worried about it. He was quite calm about it all, wasn't he, after the game against Forest, saying he'd much rather see his players have that passion and show that they care for each other when they had the kind of all the bundle at the end. But yeah, what are your thoughts on it? What are your concerns?
I, like you, saw that article on BBC. I've seen a bit on The Athletic as well, sort of highlighting the fact that we have picked up a lot of yellow cards. And obviously, like you just said there, we were the record holders last season, and we're on course to break that record at the moment by some considerable distance if it carries on. I think, without going into facts and figures too much and just going off what I would class as like the eye test, what do I feel as though when I watch Chelsea? Do I think we're a dirty team? Do I think we're a team that are a master of the dark arts? I say no to both of them. Just at the moment, that's just how I feel. Cucurella is someone that is always going to pick up yellow cards. The way he plays, the way he's always in the opponent's ears. So when he's marking his winger, you can just tell. Every single week's the same. He's at them, he's chirping, he's giving them a bit of stick. And then obviously if they score a goal or if maybe they get the better of him on a particular play, they come up to him, they give him a little bit of stick, and the sort of the cycle continues. So he's a player that will always kind of pick up yellow cards for dissent. And referees, sometimes you just get a referee, you just know that they've got their eye on someone before the game's even started. And Cucurella seems like that type of player. What I would say, I mentioned it on a voice note when we played West Ham away. If you remember, there was about 20 minutes to go in the game. We were 3-0 up, and West Ham broke. And I think it may have been Bowen, it may have been somebody else, but they were crossing the halfway line and a fairly sort of dangerous beginning to a move. And Cucurella just came straight over, side the person down on the halfway line, and he got a yellow card. West Ham got a free kick, and we managed to get all our players back. Now, that's what I'd class as a good yellow card. When you look at the weekend, Cole Palmer, I think you may have said this, but he got booked for basically talking to the referee. So Nottingham Forest were basically just taking the piss. And they've been doing it for the entire match. The goalkeepers, the throw-in takers, the rolling around on the floor when there was clearly nothing wrong with them. And I thought we kind of got to a point in the Premier League where we cleared a lot of this up. And it's difficult for the referee because he can't not stop the play, because if there is a player that is generally injured, he's going to get in a lot of trouble if he doesn't stop it. But at the same time, we all know they're not injured. We all know this. When the goalkeeper went down like he'd been shot, I actually thought that was a little bit in bad taste, because he went down and didn't move, and you could have been forgiven for thinking that he had a concussion or some kind of bloody brain damage the way he went down and didn't move. And then literally 10 seconds later, he's up on his feet. Well, not 10 seconds later, but after he's had his treatment and there's been 14 physios on looking at him, up he gets and away he goes. And you think to yourself, he didn't even get hit in the head. You look at the replay, he got hit in the top of the chest, and he's holding his face. And this is the sort of stuff that drives me mad. Now, Palmer went to the referee. There was about 3 minutes to go. So he played 13 minutes, and we're about 10 minutes into that extra time. And Palmer just said to the referee, are you gonna do something about this? Now, whether he said, are you fucking gonna do something about this or not, I don't know. Only he can answer that. But I'm sure referees are sworn at, or there's swear words put in their general direction for most of the match. And obviously everything isn't given a yellow card, but it's almost like we all know it. We see it every week. Referees they're so keen to give away yellow cards for the real stupid stuff. But whenever there's a bad foul on Cole Palmer, upended from behind about 19 times against Bournemouth in the first half, I don't think they picked up a single yellow card for it. So it's a hard one because I look at Chelsea and I don't think they're a team, like I say, that are particularly dirty. I don't think they're a particularly malicious side. I think we're better at protecting ourselves. I think we're better at sticking up for ourselves. And over time, that will become even better. Now, what you need really is a player like a John Terry, because what he used to say to everybody in the dressing room was, if, for example, John Obi Mikel goes in for a foul and gets a yellow card, right, okay, Lampard, it's your turn next. Okay, right, I'll go next. Ramirez, it's your go next. And I think Chelsea are quite cute at that. They're not going in for the second yellow too often. I don't think we've had a red card this season. Someone's going to probably correct me now. Certainly not for 2 yellow cards, I don't believe. So they're getting a bit smarter on that front. JT, like I say, was always really good at orchestrating that pattern so that somebody didn't obviously get in the referee's mind as, oh, he's made 2 or 3 fouls, now I've got to send him off. So I don't think it's a big problem. I think the Bournemouth game was a complete joke. I mean, what was it, 14 yellow cards plus the 2 managers got booked as well? I mean, that's Anthony Taylor. I mean, the guy literally hates us. I mean, anybody can dress it up however they want. He's a dreadful referee who has a real bad feeling towards Chelsea, always has done and always seems to, kind of always will do. So when you take that game out, we said it on the day, it wasn't a bad game, it wasn't a rough game. I think Bournemouth and Chelsea came off with mutual respect for one another. I don't think it was all handshakes. There was no pushing and shoving and just general abuse towards each other. It was a very competitive match, but Anthony Taylor made it into a complete farce. I think referees, like I say, do have a very poor way of handling certain things. So in relation to your question, do I think Chelsea have a big problem? On the face of it, yes. Based on those numbers, I would say, yes, we do have a problem. And with the young team will come dissent and will come certain mistakes. But it doesn't tell the whole story. I don't think Chelsea are particularly bad in terms of how I don't look at Chelsea and think, oh my word, that is a terrible tackle. Oh my word, that's an awful tackle. I had a quick look on the Premier League's webpage, and there's players on there that have made a lot more fouls than Chelsea players, a lot more fouls. And they've got half the amount of bookings than Chelsea players. So again, I don't think there's a particular vendetta against Chelsea, but I do think sometimes when you're on primetime TV a lot more, and Chelsea have been on primetime a lot more than a lot of other teams at the moment, I do think in those high-profile matches, referees are more compelled to give away yellow cards than they are normally. That's just my feeling, because it's almost like, well, okay, they're playing Man City today. That's a bad tackle. Everybody is looking at this game. Like a shirt pull or something. Oh, I better give that a yellow card. But I think a lot of Saturday at 3 o'clock, which you get your Brentfords and your Wolves and your Brightons a lot more. They're probably not picking up as many yellow cards as you think, because they're basically not on the TV. So that may have something to do with it. Well, but as regards to Chelsea having a problem on paper, yes, we do. I think as a feeling, I'd say no, we don't.
Hey, it's Chris here with a really quick message. Check us out on Instagram at 1905 Podcast. You'll find video clips, photos, and much more about everything we discuss on the show. Plus, it's a great way to get in touch to tell us your thoughts, share your feedback, or just say hi. Follow us on Instagram at 1905 Podcast. And now, back to the show. To finish the episode this week, we asked you guys out there on Instagram to send us your questions, and we have a couple of great ones that we're going to answer now. So thank you for sending those in. If you do want to get in touch, you can follow us on Instagram, which is 1905 Podcast, and send us an email at hello@1905podcast.com. So we're going to pick 2 questions, and I'm going to answer one, and Joe's going to answer the other. So the first question is for Joe, and it comes from David Plummer. So David asks, based on the conversation about Cole Palmer and Eden Hazard last week, who, in your opinion, are the top 5 most talented players you've ever seen at Chelsea? So, Joe, over to you. Top 5 players.
Okay, I will answer this as best as possible. I think if I'm hearing you right, I'm going on almost outstanding natural talent. So I'll begin with the fantastic N'Golo Kante. He is unplayable. The heartbeat of Chelsea's midfield for so long. Obviously, Premier League champion with Chelsea, Premier League champion with the minnows of Leicester City. This guy could carry a whole team on his back. There were performances that just defy the laws of plausibility with the way he played. I mean, he was just a machine, a box-to-box midfield player, a guy that could twist the silkiest of players inside out, the guy that popped up actually quite a few goals for Chelsea in his time. Some remarkable finishes. The one against Liverpool, I'll never forget that. That's what the toe poke into the top corner was incredible. When he sold David De Gea, the fantastic dummy, when we won 4-0 back at the Bridge, that was incredible too. But yeah, this guy, Chelsea were nothing without him. His injuries were sadly a big part of his story too. But N'Golo Kante is without doubt one of Chelsea's best ever players, and I would pay, like I say, very good money to watch this guy play. After him, I would probably put Arjen Robben. Arjen Robben was a player that never stayed at the club for very long, purely because he was scouted by Real Madrid very early on in his Chelsea career. But what a time he had at Chelsea. Absolutely lightning quick. I mean, I don't think I've ever really seen anything as quick as that with the ball. Mudryk, obviously, in the modern era, would come close, but Robben with the football was unplayable. You couldn't catch him once he was gone. And not only that, he had tremendous skill, tremendous ability to be so accurate with his shots towards goal. A player that, like I say, didn't hang around long enough, unfortunately, but Arjen Robben was just so freaking good. Gutted when he left. Really gutted when he left. I think I knew what he was going to be. I think we all probably knew what he was going to be. But yeah, Real Madrid came calling, and then he didn't actually hit the heights at Real Madrid as he probably should have done. And then Bayern Munich, he was just outstanding. And his Champions League runs, just frightening. And forever grateful for him for missing the penalty in Munich. That was a very nice touch. Player number 3, I'm going to put Joe Cole here. Joe Cole was a player that you couldn't fail to be excited by. He had every trick in the book, came with a big reputation from West Ham. You knew when Alex Ferguson was touting him at the age of about 15, you knew this boy was going to be something special, and he lived up to the hype, I think. Maybe some people would say that he had a few kind of moments in games where maybe went missing, but I think he was a maverick. I mean, a guy that could just, on any given day, he just literally standing and applauding, and the way he sort of did things that no other player could do on the field was just remarkable. A superstar, a lovable guy, a likeable person, a very humble guy, a big Chelsea fan. Not that matters here, but, you know, a huge reason why Chelsea was so successful in that era under numerous Chelsea managers. And then comes the outstanding Eden Hazard. How can he not be in Chelsea's top 5 players of pure natural talent and just gifts? Here was a guy that could just basically, he just sort of waltzed around. He never looked like he ran fast. He never looked like he was in a sweat or looked overly bothered at times. He was a player that trained with his shoelaces undone, a guy that basically never seemed under pressure, didn't seem as though the occasion ever got to him, and it didn't. A wonderful football player, as good on his left as he was on his right. He had step-overs that, you know, only Cristiano Ronaldo came close to doing. A bullet of a right foot that could shoot from outside the box, inside the box. He could swerve, he could swivel, he could take players on, he could beat you with a cross. This guy just beggars belief that we managed to get him for 30 million quid from Lyon, and you knew something was up when a player sort of announces his own transfer on social media to a club, kind of the way he did. Only Zlatan Ibrahimovic, I can remember sort of in the modern era doing that sort of thing, and we all know what sort of player Zlatan was. So, yeah, this was a player that gave me so much joy for so long, and yeah, gutted that he got injuries at Real Madrid. I think anybody who loved football wouldn't wish that on anybody, particularly him. A really sweet guy. Again, very humble. Nothing ever kind of got in the way of him. His family always came first. His football always came second, but what a guy. Again, endless joy from him. And finally, the unbelievable Gianfranco Zola cannot be left off of this list. He was the main reason why Chelsea was so successful and so popular back in the 2000s, late 90s, 2000s. He basically means more to me than probably most other players ever do. John Terry and Lampard and Drogba, they'll always be the club's DNA. They are the winning machine. They are the cog that made it all turn year after year, that made the club so successful. But the people that came before them, I think John Terry and Lampard, and they wouldn't even disagree with this, that Gianfranco Zola is just an absolute magician. If you never got the chance to see this guy play, you have to go and watch some YouTube clips. You have to go and watch some old footage of this guy. He was just, his talent was endless. He was basically Eden Hazard before we had Eden Hazard. He could score free kicks. He could score these beautiful lobs, these chips, these power shots. He was only about 5 foot, 5'1", and the fact that Alex Ferguson always used to put 2 players on him every time that we played Man United shows you the respect that he gave him. And who can ever, forget the time we played Liverpool when his last ever game for Chelsea, and he put Jamie Carragher on his backside 3 times, and I think it was Danny Murphy and probably somebody else. He just, the joy that he gave people, that is why you go to football. Now, we all love a 1-0 win. I've said that myself before in the past. Can we dog one out? Of course, that's brilliant, but it's not the real reason. If you can go to football and get a guy like him, basically make you stand up for 90 minutes because you just can't, you don't want the game to end. Gianfranco Zola was the person that made me, as a fan, believe that Chelsea could go places. Just a class act and one of the nicest, if not the nicest guys in the world. Mercurial talent, not surpassed. I don't think you'll beat a player like him for what he gave me and all my friends and family who were a Chelsea fan. He was just the fucking best.
Great answers, Joe. What a 5 they are. So thanks for that question, David Plummer. The second question I'm going to answer, and it comes from a Joe, but a different Joe. This is Joe Stevenson. And Joe Stevenson has asked us to rank our new signings from the summer. So Joe's picked out 6, which I guess are the 6 kind of players who've been playing the most in the first 10 minutes. So I've got Tosin Adarabioyo, Vega, Kieran Dewsbury-Hall, Pedro Neto, Sancho and João Felix. So great question, and I'm going to answer this one. The first thing that comes to mind when I look at the 6, I've got them written down in front of me, including their fees as well. The first thing that comes to mind is, at this point in time, I quite like all of them in different ways, and I'm not against any of them at this point. It's very early, but I think each of them in their own way has shown signs that they could end up being a good signing. I think you could put a good argument forward that any of them could turn out to be good, but I'm going to put them in order because that's what you've asked for. So at the bottom, there's 6 here. At the bottom of the list, I'm going to go with Kieran Dewsbury-Hall. Now, his fee was 30 million, so about in the middle range of kind of the players that we're going to talk through. And the only reason that he's there, if I'm being completely honest, is the question mark over him at the moment is probably whether he's good enough and going to be good enough long term to be a really serious member of the squad. And I would say there's been a couple of games early on when he's come on and you've had that genuine concern. And then obviously he was excellent in Europe last week, as you quite rightly spoke about earlier in the episode, which gives you signs that actually with time and a bit of confidence, he could be a really useful squad player. So I think jury's out, but because of the jury being out and because he was 30 million, I'm gonna put him at the bottom of the list. But again, I'm not down on him. I'm just unsure, I would say, at this stage. Number 5, I'm going to put João Felix. So João Felix was one of the more expensive ones. So he was 43 million. And what I'm going to say about João Felix is I actually think for his pure footballing ability and the potential he has shown in waves already in a Chelsea shirt, he's got that immense ability and his ceiling is incredibly high. So why is he sort of second bottom on my list, or 5th top, if however you want to put it, is probably the question mark of whether we needed him. He is effectively playing the Palmer role, isn't he, in the B team, which is meaning we can protect Palmer, give him minutes, And actually in that alone, if we can protect our main man Palmer, then I'm bringing in someone like Felix, which means you haven't got to change your system too much. Then maybe that's not a bad sign. And such a shame that header didn't go in against Forest, because that would have been huge for him, wouldn't it? Number 4, I'm going to go with Pedro Neto. So he's that low for me purely on his fee, because he's the most expensive. He was £50 million thereabouts. So there's a lot of money, but he is also a player that I'm really excited about. He's bought Premier League ready. He's really fun to watch. He's non-stop running. He's so direct. And he just strikes me as one of those players that will be around Chelsea for the long term. Like, I can see him still being at the club in 4 or 5 years. And the same way that like a Willian or those kind of player, that kind of player was a very different player, but there'll always be, I think, a use for someone like Pedro Neto. He can play on either wing. You can start him. He can be a really useful player off the bench. I think particularly in some of these bigger games, it'd be interesting to see at Anfield, for example, where there is likely to be a bit more space in behind. I think he could be deadly and really useful for us. So yeah, again, he's 4th on the list, but it's a strong list. So yeah, big fan of Neto. Number 3, I'm going to go with Tosin. He's that high for me because he was a free transfer, so potentially a really good piece of business. And I think already, every time I've seen him play, he really hasn't put much of a foot wrong. A couple of little moments here and there, but generally he's looked really solid, whoever he's been playing alongside. And I think the biggest compliment I can give him is that even with Fofana suspended against Liverpool, meaning that we're going to have to change things up obviously in that game, we're pretty confident that Tosin will come in, and actually I'm not too worried. Number 2 is almost like one of my favourites at the moment, which is Vega. Really reasonable fee, it was 12 million. He's a bit of an Ivanovic, as you've said before. He's so strong, he's so passionate. He's obviously, we've seen he's decent in the other box, he can score a goal. And to have him again coming in at Anfield, most likely in for Cucurella, that's going to be a huge test for him because he's going to be up against Salah. I fancy him to give it a good go. And again, I'm not as concerned as I would be if you could see him really putting in that huge display and he's a cult hero, I think, already amongst the Chelsea fans. So yeah, it looks like a really good bit of business to me. And then finally, number 1, top of the list, I'm going to go with Jadon Sancho. And 2 kind of key reasons for this. I think Chelsea have got the obligation, isn't it, to buy him at the end of the season, around 21 million. And that just looks like actually a really good fee. I think the reason I put him at the top of the list is out of all of them, I think he's the one who's immediately solved a need that we had in the team to improve a part of the team. And he's coming immediately on the left wing, and he is an upgrade on Mudryk. And I think actually we're only seeing the very start of what he could be at Chelsea if we can get the right players around him. I think he's one of those players, you saw it against Olaena, he was actually taking him on and he was beating him every time pretty much, but he just needed that little pass in. That kind of little, he looks for those 1-2s, a little bit like you had with, I always remember Hazard, you used to do it with Oliver Giroud, didn't he, so well. And those little interplays, we saw it against Brighton where he kind of did that 1-2 with Enzo Fernandez and won the penalty. When he came against Bournemouth, he was looking to play that ball into Nkunku so often. So I think you need to get players a little bit closer to Sancho to get the very best of him. But I think for that fee, again, comes in Premier League ready. I think it looks like it already a really good piece of business and top of the list for me, but I'd be interested. I'd love to know actually if people want to tell us on Instagram or by email, hello@1905podcast.com, what your order for that list would be. Because I think you could probably spin an angle just about any way there, because it's at this point in time, it's not looking like a bad transfer window at all for us. And let's hope that we're feeling like that at the end of the year.
Those were the Chelsea notes for this week. If you enjoyed the podcast, do us a favour and share it with a fellow Blue. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a review wherever you're listening. Wherever you may be, stay carefree, and remember, every little thing's gonna be alright.